Jung shows us that archetypes like the animus aren't inherently problems. They are, in their healthy form, powerful sources of inner strength and wisdom. But when they are wounded, they tragically work against the psyche. Healing that profound. Wound means beginning the arduous yet immensely rewarding process of transforming this internal authority into a true ally. It means consciously creating a masculine presence within your own being that protects instead of punishes, affirms, without dominating and guides without crushing your spirit. Whether you are a man or a woman, this deep healing reorganizes the very foundation of your identity. And with that fundamental shift, the world stops being something you constantly have to defend against and transforms into a space where you can finally, truly live as your authentic self. When that crucial inner structure is built on an enduring absence, life can become a long, relentless attempt to make up for what was missing, without even fully realizing it. A person enters into an endless pursuit not for ordinary recognition, but for that one specific, validating gaze they never received, the gaze of a father. That ceaseless search subtly seeped into every area of life, career choices, intimate relationships, lifestyle decisions. Everything can unconsciously become a quiet campaign to prove something that you're capable, that you're worthy, that you're respectable, that you belong. It's as if there's a permanent stage set up in your mind, and someone is perpetually sitting in the front row, critically judging your every performance. Only that someone might not even be around anymore, or perhaps they never truly were, and yet their critical role is still profoundly active inside your psyche. Jung famously said that as long as a complex remains unconscious, it relentlessly runs your life from behind the scenes, from the shadows, and the deep, unfulfilled need to. Be seen becomes the relentless fuel behind every single action, even the most self-destructive ones. This is precisely how the burnout cycle begins. You never truly rest because everything you do carries the immense, invisible weight of trying to rewrite an old, painful story. Even your hard-won victories lose their flavor, their genuine joy, because they're not truly celebrations. They're merely desperate attempts to fill the gaping hole left by an inner father who never genuinely said, "I'm proud of you. You are enough." And perhaps the hardest part, the most agonizing truth, is realizing that no achievement, no matter how grand, can ever truly rewrite the past. No external success can undo the pain of a childhood. No amount of external validation can replace the essential love that never came from that specific source. Trying to make that happen just keeps you inextricably chained to a time that's already gone, perpetually attempting to reclaim something that never existed in the way you desperately needed it to. But there's a turning point, a sacred moment when you can consciously stop and unequivocally declare, "I don't need that approval anymore, because I have grown. Because now I possess the inner capacity to look at myself and validate who I truly am intrinsically." When that profound awareness is born, everything shifts subtly but irrevocably. The world, which once felt like a demanding courtroom, begins to feel like fertile ground, a vast, open space for genuine expression, not for relentless judgment. For authentic presence, not for exhausting performance. Healing the father wound begins with a simple yet incredibly powerful gesture, naming the pain. As long as it remains unacknowledged, unexpressed, it continues to operate in the background, subtly but powerfully shaping your relationships, your self-esteem, your life choices. And perhaps until now you've instinctively tried to avoid touching that pain, to push it away. But denial doesn't heal. It only prolongs the suffering. You have to say it honestly and bravely. It hurt. Something fundamental was missing, and it still affects me deeply today. That raw, honest recognition creates crucial space for something most people instinctively try to avoid feeling. Feeling the anger, the profound sense of abandonment, the deep grief for everything that never arrived. Not as a dramatic indulgence, but as a profound act of liberation. Because what you don't allow yourself to feel, you inevitably repeat. But healing doesn't stop there. After naming and feeling comes the most important transformative step, transformation. And transforming doesn't mean passively waiting for your father to miraculously change or perpetually expecting others to fill that deep void. It means bravely stepping into the role of the mature adult who can now consciously care for themselves. Jung wisely said that one day we must all become our own parents. That means meticulously building inside ourselves the very presence that was missing, an internal presence that is both firm and profoundly loving, one that guides without punishing, that supports without demanding. It begins when you start, consistently treating yourself with genuine respect. It happens when you courageously say no to what hurts you, when you consciously stop abandoning yourself in moments of need. That nurturing inner father begins to show up in the smallest, most significant moments, in the compassionate way you talk to yourself, in the healthy boundaries you courageously set, in the conscious daily decision to stop chasing external approval and instead to cultivate inner validation. And that's precisely why what I'm about to suggest works so deeply, so profoundly. This exercise is widely used by therapists, psychologists, and family constellations work because of its transformative power. Writing a letter to your father. It's the same profound process we might use to heal the mother wound, but this time, the letter is addressed directly to your dad, or to the symbolic representation of the father figure in your life. The exercise is simple, yet incredibly potent. Write a letter to your father. But this letter is not meant to be polite or logical or perfectly polished. It is emphatically not a letter for him to read or for you to send. It is a letter for you to release. Write down absolutely everything you never got to say, the raw pain, the simmering anger, the profound absence, the gnawing frustration, the deep longing, the lingering resentment, the bewildering confusion, the crushing silence. Write about what you felt when he didn't truly see you, what you wished he would have said and never did. Write about the countless times you tried desperately to please him, to shrink yourself, to disappear, just to be noticed, just to receive a glimmer of his attention. Don't worry about structure or clarity or grammar. Just let it all pour out. If you need to curse, do it. If you need to cry, cry freely. If you get stuck, keep going. Keep writing, even if it's just repeating the same phrase. This letter is your sacred, safe space to finally and truly listen to yourself, perhaps for the very first time in your life. When you're done writing, take a deep breath. Then read it out loud. If you can, look directly into your own eyes and mirror as you read. Let the words move through you, not to relive the pain endlessly, but to finally and completely release it. And then, as a powerful act of ritual and closure, burn the letter for real. Turn that moment into a sacred ritual. With that powerful act, you are unequivocally declaring, I'm done waiting. I'm done carrying this burden. I'm letting go now. From my heart to yours, please do it. But do it for real, with full intention. I say this from profound personal experience. Because just like you, I carried my own wounds with my mom. They were subtle at first, hard to name, but with my dad, it ran far deeper, an absence that looked invisible but cut right through me. For a long time, I kept going. I rationalized. I functioned. Until the day I wrote my letter. I didn't know what would come out. I started with no plan, no expectation. But after the very first line, everything poured out, memories, unspoken. Words. Scenes I thought I'd forgotten forever. And with them came answers, connections I'd never made before. In that raw, honest moment, I finally understood why I loved the way I did. Why I was so relentlessly hard on myself. Why I couldn't rest without a crushing sense of guilt. And it was right there, in that profound act of release, that I began to truly change. That letter became a powerful doorway. A doorway of pain, yes, but also a doorway to immense freedom. So please, write yours. And if you feel moved to do so, come back and share your experience in the comments, because maybe what you write could be the very spark someone else needs to begin their own healing journey. Besides the letter, there are other powerful practices that can support your inner healing. One of them is therapeutic writing directed to your inner child. Picture yourself today standing kindly in front of yourself as a child. What did they need to hear but never did? What words of comfort, validation, or guidance would you have spoken to them if someone had just given you the words back then? Write it all down, and if you can, read it aloud. This begins to reshape how you see yourself from the inside out. Another powerful practice is the empty chair exercise. Sit across from an empty chair and vividly imagine your father sitting there. Say everything that's been buried for years. Speak your raw, unfiltered truth. If it feels right, respond as if you were him, not to create a logical dialogue, but to allow the emotion to move through your body and out. There are even deeper techniques, like Jung's active imagination, in which you engage directly with parts of your psyche, the wounded child, the internalized image of the father, the critical voice that has haunted you. These inner encounters can open some of the most honest, liberating paths inside you. Slowly, consistently, you begin treating yourself with more profound respect. You learn to say enough when it's needed, and you start to truly understand that caring for yourself is not only your responsibility, but also the highest act of love. When that profound inner presence begins to settle inside you, something shifts quietly, but for good. The world, which once felt like a demanding courtroom where you were perpetually on trial, starts to feel like a vast, open space where you can finally breathe, truly breathe. Life, which used to feel like a relentless string of tests you had to pass, transforms into a profound journey of authentic expression. And for the very first time, you feel like you can simply exist without having to constantly prove you deserve to. That's what truly healing the father wound ultimately is. It's stepping out of the emotional battlefield. It's letting go of the defensive mode that has defined so much of your life. It's stopping the projection of your worth onto someone else's elusive gaze. Because in the end, the father wound wasn't just about your dad. It was about how you learned to see yourself through him. And when that distorted reflection changes, when you choose a new lens, your entire inner landscape begins to shift profoundly. And beautifully, you realize you no longer have to keep running, keep striving. You don't have to be the strongest, the smartest, the most productive version of yourself. You're no longer chasing an invisible trophy or dodging a judgment that was never truly, legitimately yours. You're finally stepping into who you truly are without the filter of old pain. And that brings a kind of freedom that doesn't depend on external applause. A peace that isn't shattered by mistakes. A strength that doesn't have to harden itself to survive. It's a strength that rises naturally from within, born from reconnecting with your deepest essence after years of living in the shadow of what was missing. Jung called this profound process the return to the center, a powerful movement that brings you back from the scattered outskirts of a wounded ego and reconnects you with the self, the deepest, most authentic, and truest part of your being. It's not about becoming some unattainable, ideal version of yourself. It's about bravely shedding the version you built purely to survive and becoming, honestly, imperfectly, wholly you. When that happens, love stops being a desperate search and transforms into a vibrant, overflowing expression. You no longer love to fill a pound void. You love because there's something rich and boundless inside you that simply overflows with compassion and connection. And that overflow is what finally, beautifully reconciles you with life itself. Because where there was once a void, now there is a profound grounding presence. Where there was once fear, now trust begins to take deep, unwavering root. Perhaps you've spent your whole life tirelessly trying to be seen, meticulously trying to get it right, constantly striving to please, to fit into a space that was never truly built for you. But maybe, just maybe, something is beginning to shift right now. Because when you recognize the wound without guilt, without denial, it stops running the show from the shadows of your unconscious. And when you consciously give yourself the care, the validation, the unconditional love you spent a lifetime desperately searching for in someone else's eyes, the cycle finally begins to break irrevocably. What used to be a constant, exhausting chase for external validation can now become a quiet, profound act of self-love, not as a fleeting concept, but as a daily practice, as a real, tangible presence. You don't need to chase the love that never came anymore. You can stop. You can breathe, and you can choose from this moment forward how you want to relate to yourself, to others, and to the vibrant tapestry of life. This isn't about forgetting what hurt. It's about giving that pain a new place, a place where it no longer dictates. Your story, where you can look back with respect for your journey and look ahead with unwavering strength. If this deeply spoke to something profound in you, please leave a comment that simply says, I choose to be free. That's how I'll know you stayed with me all the way through. And more than that, I'll know you're ready to take this next crucial step with conscious intention. Thank you for listening with an open heart. And thank you for being a part of this space of profound transformation, this profound individual journey of healing. The father wound often opens a surprising door to a larger, more collective understanding. For many, especially men, the absence or distortion of the father figure isn't just a personal failing. It's a reflection of a deeper systemic crisis in modern masculinity. We live in a world where traditional models of manhood are often seen as outdated, toxic, or simply undefined. What does it mean to be a man today when the old scripts no longer serve and new, healthier ones haven't fully emerged? This collective confusion echoes the individual father wound, creating a broader sense of an unmoored masculine identity. Many men, having grown up without a clear, compassionate fatherly guide, struggle to integrate their own strength with their capacity for empathy, their drive for achievement with their need for connection. They might swing between extremes, either becoming overly aggressive and controlling, mimicking a distorted image of power, or retreating into passivity and emotional detachment, unable to assert themselves authentically. This isn't a moral failing. It's a lack of healthy archetypal patterning, a missing blueprint for mature masculinity. The internalized absence becomes a blueprint for their own lives, leading to cycles of isolation, unexpressed emotion, and a relentless, often unconscious, search for external validation in career, status, or fleeting achievements. For women, the collective masculine wound often manifests in how they perceive and relate to men in general, having internalized a distant or demanding father. They might unconsciously project these same qualities onto all male figures, struggling to trust, to surrender, or to allow themselves to be truly supported. They may find themselves repeatedly drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, or conversely become overly self-reliant, subconsciously believing they must be both masculine and feminine for themselves. This echoes Jung's concept of the wounded animus, where the internal masculine force, instead of being a creative and supportive ally, becomes a harsh inner critic or a driving, relentless taskmaster, mirroring the perceived deficiencies of the external father. Healing the individual father wound, therefore, is not just a personal act. It is, in a profound sense, an act of collective healing. As each person integrates their own masculine archetype in a healthier way, whether embodying a more grounded and compassionate masculinity as a man, or cultivating a more balanced and supportive animus as a woman, they contribute to a broader shift. They begin to define what healthy masculinity can be, a blend of strength and tenderness, action and introspection, protection and vulnerability. It's about recognizing that the father isn't just a biological role, but a crucial psychic function that provides structure, direction, and validation. When that function is absent or wounded in the collective, society itself suffers from a lack of grounded, healthy masculine energy. By courageously facing your own father wound, you are not just liberating yourself. You are, in a small but significant way, contributing to the repatterning of this fundamental archetype for future generations. You are becoming a beacon of what is possible when the silent wound is finally acknowledged and consciously transformed. This inner work ripples outward, affecting your relationships, your community, and ultimately, the broader cultural narrative around what it means to grow, to lead, and to be truly whole in the world. It's an act of profound personal courage with far-reaching collective implications. Have you ever felt it? That profound, almost ethereal ache that persists even when everything outwardly seems perfectly fine, even when no one around you appears to notice a thing? It's an invisible tension, a subtle constricting band that tightens across your chest, accelerates your thoughts into a dizzying rush, and occasionally, quite literally, steals your breath. Sometimes it manifests seemingly out of nowhere, an unbidden, unwelcome guest in your quiet moments. Other times, it arises solely from the mere act of imagining tomorrow, a spectral projection of future uncertainties that casts a long, chilling shadow over your present. You try, desperately, to control it, to wrestle it into submission. You might meticulously practice deep breathing exercises, attempting to calm the frantic rhythm within. You might diligently distract your mind with an endless array of tasks, convincing yourself, perhaps, that everything is, in fact, perfectly okay. But deep down, in the quiet, undeniable recesses of your being, with a chilling certainty that it's not. And then the insidious cycle begins, the gnawing fear of feeling fear, the pervasive anguish for simply being anxious, and the crushing, familiar guilt for not being able to simply be okay, to navigate life with effortless, carefree composure. They've told you, haven't they, that this is a fundamental problem, a glaring defect within you that demands to be fixed, that there's something intrinsically wrong with your very makeup, with your essence. But what if this entire premise is profoundly mistaken? What if this deep, persistent anxiety isn't a fundamental flaw at all, but rather a profound symptom of something far greater, far deeper, and far more complexly rooted within your psyche? In this exploration, we won't offer you simplistic breathing tips or prescriptive productivity lists designed to tame your mind. What you are about to hear may indeed feel profoundly uncomfortable. It may challenge deeply ingrained beliefs about yourself and your lived experiences. But it also holds the immense potential to be profoundly liberating. Because perhaps, just perhaps, no one has ever truly articulated this to you. But this restless unease that so persistently haunts you, this pervasive sense of disquiet, can actually be a legitimate, urgent cry from your very consciousness, not a mistake to be corrected, but a vital, undeniable message to be heard. Carl Jung, one of the pioneering architects of depth psychology, was among the first to reveal that a father's absence or his psychological unavailability extends far beyond your personal narrative. Your individual story, it touches something far deeper, something primordial within the collective psyche. In the profound landscape of the unconscious mind, the father represents the essential axis of authority, the vital drive to robustly engage with the external world, the foundational source of validation and direction. When that crucial archetypal figure fails to manifest in a healthy, integrated way, whether through outright physical absence, profound emotional abandonment, pervasive coldness, or even unrelenting, impossible pressure, something fundamental breaks inside the developing child's psyche, it's not just love that's conspicuously missing. It's the very foundation of the child's sense of self-worth, their nascent understanding of their place and value in the world. Today, our purpose is to help you consciously recognize this often invisible emotional wound and to provide you with a practical, tangible way to begin the profound process of healing it. And as we reach the culmination of this video, I will challenge you with something simple, yet remarkably powerful, a straightforward practice that might just help you finally break free from the persistent, often suffocating grip of a presence that was never truly, fully there for you. From the earliest, most formative years of life, a child's nascent psyche meticulously constructs inner images, archetypal templates to begin making fundamental sense of the vast, bewildering world around them. Carl Jung called these deeply ingrained images archetypes primordial, universal patterns that profoundly shape our emotional experience even long before we acquire the capacity to speak or articulate our feelings. Among these foundational archetypes, one of the most crucial is undeniably the archetype of the father. At a deep, symbolic level, the father is far more than simply a biological man. He represents the potent psychic force that fundamentally aids us in gracefully breaking away from the initial emotional fusion with the mother figure and embarking upon the arduous, yet immensely rewarding, journey of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming precisely who we are intrinsically meant to be. It is the energetic force that courageously separates, that carefully cuts the invisible, yet deeply felt cord of absolute emotional dependence that ultimately places a child before the vast, challenging expanse of life with a budding sense of courage and clear direction. Where the mother archetype is often perceived as the primal source of unconditional love, profound nurture, and comforting affection, the father archetype stands firmly for essential strength, crucial guidance, and unwavering protection. The mother nurtures the heart, tending to our emotional core. The father, conversely, profoundly prepares you for the demanding, often harsh realities of the external world. And perhaps that is precisely why the father wound is often so much quieter, so much less overtly dramatic, and yet, at the very same time, profoundly more devastating in its long-term impact. Because while the mother's absence often manifests as a palpable, consuming emotional hunger, the father's absence often reveals itself as a fractured, unstable foundation, a pervasive lack of clear direction, a profound void of validation that, quietly, insidiously, eats away at one sense of self from the inside out. If you're curious about how the mother wound plays out in your life, manifesting in unique, often subtle ways, we have a comprehensive video dedicated entirely to that topic right here on the channel. It is, honestly, one of the most eye-opening and deeply impactful pieces we've ever created. We receive countless messages every single day from individuals who tell us it was the very first time they truly felt seen, truly understood in their own emotional landscape. If that resonates with your experience, the link is conveniently placed in the description below. It is unequivocally worth your precious time. But let's return to the profound impact of the father. When the powerful archetype of father manifests in a healthy, integrated way, through the consistent presence of a real, engaged father figure, it offers a foundational bedrock of firm, yet profoundly safe, authority. This is the essence of the dad who guides without crushing the spirit, who gently corrects without instilling corrosive shame, who bravely challenges without ever abandoning. He meticulously sets clear directions, defines healthy limits, patiently teaches enduring values, and most importantly, he sees you. He looks directly into your eyes, deeply, profoundly, and communicates, perhaps even without uttering a single word, the undeniable truth: you matter. You belong. You are inherently worthy. But when that vital archetype fails to manifest constructively because the father was passively disengaged, overtly violent, profoundly emotionally absent, or even idolized to an impossible, unattainable degree, a deep, painful fracture inevitably forms within the child's delicate psyche. The child doesn't receive the essential internal push, the confident sense of agency needed to bravely and confidently face the world. Instead, they grow up insecure, internally divided, and often tragically stuck in a lifelong waiting room, perpetually yearning for a validation that, maddeningly, never fully arrived. That pervasive absence cannot possibly be filled with material gifts, or mere physical presence, or even blind, unquestioning authority. It is in profoundly emotional void. And when that vital emotional connection is missing, the very archetype of the father becomes distorted, rendered unreachable. What should have been a vibrant source of inner structure and clear direction tragically transforms into something that profoundly paralyzes. Jung astutely observed that every individual, in their journey toward wholeness, eventually needs to. Consciously break from the image of the father, meaning to move beyond his lingering internal influence, whether positive or negative, to truly become an integrated, autonomous self. But when that father was never truly present, never truly engaged, never truly seeing you from the outset, what breaks instead is the child's nascent ability to trust themselves, to trust others, to trust the world. And what we end up ceaselessly seeking isn't genuine freedom. It's a desperate, often unconscious longing for belonging. A belonging that, because it was never securely given in childhood, tragically transforms into something we relentlessly chase, often unconsciously. In every single decision, every interaction, every aspiration. Got it. I will provide the second block of the script, maintaining the established tone, length, and content requirements. This profound search for belonging, which originates in the deep, impressionable years of childhood, doesn't simply fade with the passage of time. It merely changes shape, shifts its scenery, but remains powerfully alive, operating relentlessly in the background of adult life, like an invisible, perpetually churning engine. Most individuals don't consciously notice the tireless operation, but that deep, pervasive exhaustion you often feel, the relentless, often self-destructive drive to constantly prove your worth, the profound struggle to simply relax and be, these deep-seated emotional currents often trace back to the very emotional roots, planted in the crucial absence of a father who never authentically affirmed your inherent worth. The child who wasn't truly seen becomes the adult who relentlessly strives for perfection, who ceaselessly seeks validation through prestigious titles, tireless performance, and relentless productivity. This adult often turns their work into a literal battlefield, a relentless arena where they must constantly prove they deserve a seat at the table, that they are worthy of recognition and belonging. But no matter how much they achieve, how many accolades they accumulate, it always feels like something crucial is still missing. Like there's an insurmountable emotional debt that can never quite be paid, a void that remains stubbornly unfilled. Jung meticulously showed us that the father wound doesn't simply vanish with the passage of time. Instead, it subtly settles into the very structure of the ego, becoming a pervasive lens, an unshakable filter that profoundly distorts how you perceive yourself and, by extension, the entire world around you. The adult who has been profoundly shaped by this emotional absence often lives in a constant, low-level state of internal tension, as if love, recognition, and acceptance have to be painstakingly earned every single day, as if one single mistake might instantly bring back the disapproving, unseeing gaze of a father who never truly saw them in the first place. That precisely is the insidious mechanism behind self-sabotage. It is not a fundamental personality flaw, but the lingering, painful echo of an unhealed wound. Deep down, there resides a part of the self that doesn't genuinely believe it deserves. A part that feels profoundly guilty for receiving. A part that simply cannot comfortably remain in moments of success, or embrace deep, authentic love, or bask in the spotlight of recognition. Because these very moments of genuine fulfillment, paradoxically trigger the same profound discomfort once inextricably tied to the father's distant, demanding, impatient, critical, or even worse, utterly non-existent gaze. Many individuals carry that pervasive discomfort as if it's simply an immutable part of who they are. Bim might articulate it by saying things like, "Oh, I'm just naturally anxious," or "I simply hate being the center of attention," or even, "I just can't bring myself to truly trust people." But these are not fundamental personality traits. They are profoundly emotional memories skillfully dressed up as permanent identities. They are intricate defense mechanisms, meticulously constructed to survive a kind of pain that, despite the passage of years, still powerfully lingers. The pain of growing up without an authentic mirror to reflect a clear, affirming image of who you are. Without a father to provide that crucial external validation, the child instinctively attempts to build internal validation on their own. But without a guiding model, without clear direction, that internal construction process is almost always incomplete, fractured. The result is an adult who functions remarkably well on the outside, appearing competent and composed, but who is perpetually exhausted on the inside, carrying the immense weight of life on their shoulders, yet harboring a constant, subtle fear that it could all crumble apart at any moment. That deep-seated insecurity you carry, it is not weakness. It is profoundly survival. It is a testament to an emotional intelligence that learned very early on that affection was dangerously unstable, and that one's intrinsic worth had to be painstakingly earned. But the very same strategy that once kept you safe is now subtly, insidiously, keeping you stuck. And consciously recognizing that profound paradox is the indispensable first step toward bravely breaking the cycle. Not all wounds bleed in the same visible way. Some ache in profound silence, a constant internal throb that goes unnoticed by others. Others scream out in vivid, painful memories that replay incessantly. But both forms, whether silent or screaming, leave indelible marks on the psyche. And when it comes to the father wound, it is absolutely crucial to understand that it can manifest in two very distinct, yet equally deep and impactful ways. First, there is the active wound, the kind you can clearly, unequivocally identify. This is the experience of a father who is openly aggressive, physically or verbally violent, or who instilled pervasive fear instead of providing a fundamental sense of safety. It includes harsh, relentless criticism, public humiliation, a total and deliberate absence of affection, or constant, damaging comparisons to siblings or other children. These are what many would immediately recognize as overt, undeniable traumas. They leave sharp, specific memories words that echo with piercing clarity, silences that cut to the bone. The child grows up knowing, deeply and instinctively, that something was profoundly wrong, even if no one ever explicitly articulated it. But then there is the far more insidious, subtle wound, just as painful, yet far harder to pinpoint. This wound manifests when the father was physically present, meticulously fulfilling his social and practical roles, but was profoundly, chronically, emotionally distant. He may have diligently provided for the family financially, but he rarely truly listened. He set clear rules and expectations, but consistently withheld genuine affection, warmth, or emotional engagement. He was technically there, but his heart, his emotional presence, was always somewhere else, perpetually unreachable. And it is within this very specific kind of relationship that countless children learn not to expect, not to ask, not to genuinely feel. They adapt to accepting the bare minimum of emotional connection, internalizing the belief that this is all they will ever genuinely get, all they are worthy of receiving. This very subtlety is profoundly dangerous because it fosters immense confusion. The child cannot logically make sense of why they feel so deeply distant, so fundamentally disconnected from someone who, by all outward appearances, technically didn't do anything wrong. And precisely because there is no visible scar, no overt trauma to point to, they begin to doubt the legitimacy of their own pain. They grow up internalizing the devastating belief that missing something invisible makes them ungrateful, that needing deep connection or emotional intimacy is a profound weakness. And so they painstakingly shape an identity that does not acknowledge the wound, but instead meticulously hides it, burying it beneath layers of apparent self-sufficiency. Both forms of the father wound, the active and the subtle, ultimately lead to the same profound outcome, a fractured sense of self, an identity painstakingly built around an enduring absence, around perpetually unmet expectations, around the constant, exhausting need to morph and adapt in order to gain a fleeting sense of acceptance. Jung profoundly reminded us that a child, faced with a deeply wounding or perpetually absent father, almost never blames the father. Instead, in their developing psyche, they instinctively blame themselves. They conclude, often in profound silence, a devastating thought. If you didn't see me, if you didn't love me, perhaps I am simply not worth seeing, not worth loving. And that insidious thought, repeated in this silence of their own mind for years, eventually solidifies into a deeply held, pervasive belief. That belief, in turn, manifests as chronic insecurity, a paralyzing fear of speaking one's truth, and a profound, pervasive shame about ever being fully seen, fully exposed. Because the father wound doesn't merely whisper, "I lacked love." It screams internally, "I lacked essential recognition, and I learned, tragically, to live without it." But living a life without being authentically seen, without true recognition, is an utterly exhausting endeavor. And eventually the psyche, in its profound wisdom, simply cannot keep pretending that it doesn't hurt when pain can't be named. When its existence is perpetually denied, the psyche, in its innate drive for survival, invariably finds a way to cope. One of the most common yet deeply damaging paths it takes is to deny the very need for connection entirely. The child learns a chilling lesson, asking for love, for affirmation, for genuine attention, yields nothing but frustration and disappointment. Showing vulnerability changes nothing. Seeking attention only culminates in further disillusionment. So they begin subtly at first to give up not on others, but on themselves. They cease expecting, they stop expressing their deepest needs. They actively suppress their innate desires for love and connection. They meticulously build a kind of independence that, from the outside, looks undeniably like strength, resilience, and unwavering self-reliance. But inside, it is, in fact, a profound act of self-abandonment. That child quietly becomes the adult, who relentlessly never asks for help, who insists on handling every burden alone, who doesn't allow themselves the profound relief of cracking, of showing weakness. This is the adult who learned to endure, but tragically forgot how to receive. Autonomy, which should be a source of freedom, transforms into rigid armor. Productivity, which should be a means to an end, becomes a relentless hiding place. Emotional detachment, a shield against the inevitable pain of once being ignored. Jung, with his piercing insight, articulated this painful process. The ego forms through adaptation. And when the environment demands denial, the ego survives by sacrificing vital parts. Emotion pulls back, receding into the background. The body physically tightens, bracing itself against perceived threats. Spontaneity vanishes, replaced by careful calculation. All of this, Jung explained, happens in the desperate name of keeping the internal system running, of maintaining a semblance of order. But at what profound cost? Many adults who pride themselves on being strong, hyperlogical, or fiercely self-reliant are, in truth, unconsciously carrying a wounded child inside. A child who learned devastatingly early that feeling is dangerous, that showing pain means losing inherent value, that needing love is simply too monumental a risk. So they painstakingly construct flawless personas, meticulously polished versions of themselves that function remarkably well in the external world, but are profoundly lost, disconnected on the inside. And that deep, pervasive disconnection takes an immense, insidious toll. Because the more relentlessly you deny what you truly feel, the further you inevitably drift from who you truly are. And the more profoundly disconnected you become from your authentic self, the harder it is to feel real, to feel truly alive. That's precisely why, even in moments of undeniable success, there can be a hollow, persistent void. Even when surrounded by people, there can be an agonizing sense of loneliness. Even in constant, frenetic motion, there's a deep, bone-weary tiredness that simply never goes away. This gradual loss of intimate contact with your own core center doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, insidious process. It begins when vital, childhood needs go unmet. It grows exponentially when silence, emotional neglect, or indifference becomes the normalized pattern. And it locks in, hardening into a core belief. When someone convinces themselves that not feeling that emotional detachment is a profound sign of strength, when it is, in reality, just another painful way of remaining unseen, unheard, unacknowledged. Over time, that initial disconnection, a childhood defense, gradually transforms into a full-blown lifestyle, a core aspect of their very personality. The person begins to genuinely believe they are naturally closed off, inherently in control, innately detached. But hidden behind that meticulously crafted armor still lives the very same child who learned not to need. And because of that, still doesn't know how to genuinely receive. And tragically, society often lavishly rewards this. Adaptation, extreme productivity, laser-like focus, relentless self-sufficiency, these are the traits that are constantly praised, publicly applauded, reinforcing the very persona that hides the wound. Every time someone expresses admiration, how do you manage it all? A small, fleeting piece of that old pain momentarily retreats, but it never truly heals. Jung, with his profound understanding of the psyche's hidden mechanisms, observed that what remains unconscious becomes fate. And often, the inevitable fate of these elaborate defenses is profound isolation. The person who feels an overwhelming need to control everything, who cannot tolerate mistakes, who systematically avoids deep, authentic connections, does not do it out of inherent coldness or malice. They do it out of deep-seated fear. Fear of opening up and not being genuinely heard again. Fear of loving deeply and not being loved back with equal measure. Fear of being truly seen and then, once more, heartbreakingly overlooked. Emotional distance, chronic over-intellectualizing. The relentless need to micromanage every aspect of life. These are all intricate ways of expertly avoiding the original, agonizing pain. But in avoiding that pain, we also inadvertently avoid intimacy, vulnerability, and the transformative power of genuine love. Eventually, what once protected you so fiercely, tragically, becomes a suffocating prison. Life transforms into a constant minefield where every emotion feels like a potential threat, where feeling too much is perceived as an undeniable weakness, where needing anyone is inherently dangerous. The powerful declaration, "I don't need anyone," is often the most honest and simultaneously the most profoundly deceptive sentence someone can utter. Honest because that's precisely what they learned in their formative years, that needing others, that showing dependence is simply too much. Too risky, too painful, but deceptive, profoundly so, because no human being was born to live in complete, utter disconnection. And the deeper that belief takes root, the harder it becomes to courageously break the cycle. Because the core pain skillfully hides behind behaviors that seem entirely normal, even admirable, to the outside world. But behind the impressive success, the flawless performance, the relentless efficiency, there's still someone who was never truly comforted, someone who learned to handle it all, but deep down just yearns to collapse, utterly exhausted, into someone's arms without having to first earn that comfort. That solace dot when that unheld, emotionally neglected child grows up, they unconsciously carry their deeply ingrained defenses into every single space, especially into their intimate relationships. What might superficially look like a conscious choice or genuine compatibility is, tragically, often just a repetition, an unconscious, relentless repetition of an emotional pattern that was never truly resolved, never fully healed. The father. Wound doesn't just profoundly shape how you see yourself. It fundamentally shapes how you connect, how you relate, how you love. It's incredibly common for those affected by this wound to repeatedly choose partners who replicate the very same emotional absence they experience in childhood. They find themselves drawn, almost magnetically, to individuals who are emotionally unavailable, distant, critical, or unpredictably inconsistent. Not because they consciously desire pain, but because this specific kind of pain is particular. Emotional landscape feels tragically familiar, almost like a return to a known, albeit painful, home. Jung termed this phenomenon symbolic repetition compulsion. It is the powerful unconscious pull to return, again and again, to the original wound, clutching a desperate, unspoken hope that this time, just this time, the love will finally come. That the validating gaze will at last arrive. That maybe, just maybe, someone will finally utter the profound words the father never did. You are enough. You are seen, you are worthy. That's precisely why so many relationships, tragically, devolve into relentless validation loops instead of evolving into safe, nurturing connections. They cease to be about genuine love and instead become a perpetual arena for proving one's worth, one's value, one's lovability. The individual doesn't just want to be loved. They desperately want to be recognized, to be truly seen. They want their partner to somehow fulfill the profound emotional promise that the father, consciously or unconsciously, broke. But this deep, unfulfilled desire comes laden with immense pressure, gnawing insecurity, and paralyzing fear. And over time, inevitably, it suffocates the very relationship. Because no partner, no matter how loving or well-intentioned, can ever truly carry the immense weight of healing a wound they didn't cause. A wound that originates from a different time in relationship. The more you expect others to provide what you never received in childhood, the more disappointment inexorably grows. The more the original pain tragically repeats, and the more the relationship, under this immense unbearable weight, inevitably breaks down. What began as a desperate search for love transforms into a relentless cycle of self-sabotage. Deep need morphs into demanding control. Unresolved pain becomes a tool for manipulation. Fear creates an unbridgeable distance. And love, instead of being a liberating bridge between two souls, becomes a never-ending test, a relentless, often impossible, test of worth that no one can ever truly pass. Recognizing this intricate, often painful, pattern isn't something to feel guilty or ashamed about. It is profoundly clarity. Because as long as you continue to love, to relate, to exist from the place of an unhealed wound, you will perpetuate the desperate, unconscious hope that someone else will magically fix something that only you, through courageous inner work, can truly heal. Loving with genuine awareness means a profound, liberating realization. I am no longer that child. And what I didn't receive back then, I now have the capacity to learn to give to myself, first and foremost, before I expect it from anyone else. Even after understanding the wound, even after acknowledging its existence, old, ingrained reactions can still subtly sneak in, taking you by surprise. This happens because some of that deep pain doesn't reside solely in the realm of logic or conscious thought. It lives deeply, persistently in the unconscious, and in the timeless domain of the unconscious. Time stands still. Jung called this profound phenomenon the father complex, a dense cluster of deeply ingrained emotional patterns centered not around the actual flesh and blood father, but around the powerful psychic imprint he left behind. This complex acts like an unseen internal emotional magnet. It gets triggered by certain situations, specific tones of voice, or particular interactions. And suddenly, without conscious choice, you're reacting like a wounded child again. This can happen whether you're 30 or even 60 years old. It's that chilling moment when someone challenges you, and you inexplicably shrink, feeling small, powerless, and profoundly ashamed without even fully understanding why. Or when a seemingly harmless critique sparks an outsized, unmanageable rage. Or, on the flip side, when a sudden silence leaves you utterly frozen, paralyzed by an unnamed fear. These intense reactions aren't genuinely about the present moment. They are powerful echoes, emotional circuits wired long ago, at a time when you possessed no way to protect yourself, no tools to process the pain. The father complex essentially hijacks the adult self and momentarily replaces it with the vulnerable, wounded child, the one still desperately chasing approval, still paralyzed by the fear of rejection, still hurting from indifference or perceived abandonment by authority, and the most insidious part. As long as this complex operates silently in the dark in the realm of the unconscious, you will continue to react automatically instead of making conscious choices. It's like stepping onto a stage where the script was written years ago and only realizing you're performing a role once the emotional meltdown begins. A boss's demanding tone, a partner's critical voice, a dominant male presence, any of these can be powerful triggers. And then afterward, you often blame yourself for not handling it better. But it's not truly about control. It's about an unconscious, deeply embedded pattern still running the show. The key, then, is to begin to notice these moments with genuine curiosity, not with harsh self-shame. Because the complex doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs, fundamentally, to be seen. And you realize that you're reacting to old, unhealed pain in a brand new moment. Something profound shifts within you. A part of you returns to the present. And with that conscious return comes true choice. But the father wound doesn't just affect your outward reactions. Sometimes the harshest damage happens within. Not in your father's actual words, but in the insidious voice he left behind inside your head. That inner voice doesn't yell. It whispers, often subtly, insidiously. You didn't do enough. There's always something missing. Don't even try, you'll just mess it up. You don't deserve rest, or joy, or recognition. It sounds superficially like responsibility, like perfectionism, like a commitment to high standards. But at its core, it is profound fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being worthy, fear of ultimate rejection. Again, Jung meticulously described this as one of the cruelest effects of the shadow. When a powerful figure like a father wounds or fails you, the child's psyche, in its desperate attempt to maintain emotional order, often cannot bear the idea that this authority figure was genuinely wrong or flawed. So to preserve a sense of safety, however warped, the child tragically turns the perceived failure inward. The silent, devastating conclusion becomes, if you didn't love me, something must be fundamentally wrong with me. If you didn't see me, maybe I'm truly invisible. If you didn't approve, I must not be good enough. This devastating thought, repeated silently for years, eventually solidifies into a deeply held, self-sabotaging belief. That belief, in turn, becomes a core part of your identity. You end up living under the immense weight of an inner tribunal, a relentless internal court, where you are simultaneously the defendant, the unyielding judge, and the harsh executioner, always feeling like you're owing, always believing you're simply not enough. And the cruelest part of all is that this inner voice doesn't feel foreign. It feels like you, but it's not you. It's a psychic inheritance, a distorted recording so old it has been tragically mistaken for undeniable truth. Healing that critical inner voice doesn't mean silencing it by force, through sheer willpower or denial. It means slowly, patiently replacing it with something more real, something more compassionate. It means cultivating an internal presence that can hold you without demanding perfection, that can guide you without resorting to punishment, can affirm your worth without crushing your spirit. That profound presence doesn't magically come from outside. It is born when you begin treating yourself with the very respect and kindness you never received. It awakens when you consciously stop being your own harshest enemy and bravely become the loving, guiding adult you always needed to find within yourself. For women, this critical inner voice sometimes takes on the shape of a wounded animus, the internalized masculine image that Jung said lives within every woman's psyche. It can become a ruthless inner authority, relentlessly demanding perfection, impossible, strength, unwavering competence, and absolute control. It directly mirrors a father who is emotionally cold, excessively demanding, or profoundly absent. Or it can even mirror an idealized, unattainable fantasy of a father who never truly showed. And when this manifests a woman often unconsciously distances herself from her feelings, from her intuition, from her inherent softness, because she learned implicitly that she had to be hard, tough, and self-sufficient to be valued. For men, the father wound often strikes directly at the core of their identity. The father was meant to be the child's first mirror of healthy masculinity, a reference point for balanced strength, grounded presence, and emotional courage. But when that mirror was cracked, distorted, or missing entirely, the result is often the man profoundly divided, outwardly confident and capable, yet internally empty, forever afraid someone will see through the meticulously crafted mask and discover he is not, and never will be, enough. Some individuals become hyper-competitive, obsessively driven by control, always needing to prove something to someone. Others withdraw from life, avoid conflict, and subtly shrink themselves, as if still perpetually waiting for permission to fully exist. In both cases, the authentic self gets buried deep beneath a carefully constructed mask, a persona not shaped by the desire to be, but by the desperate need to compensate for what was missing.